Välkommen vår nästa stora talare, Ritson.
Tack. Tack så mycket. Can you hear me okay? Lovely to be here. So 2002 is an interesting year in my life and in probably your life too. If you can cast your mind back, we were kind of coming to terms with what had happened the previous year with September the 11th. I was about 4 years into being a professor now at London Business School. And after 4 years of teaching, you get a sabbatical. And I decided, I'm not sure why, but I decided I was going to come to Stockholm and have a sabbatical at Handelshögskolan here up the road in Stockholm. And so I cycled, there's a cycle path, the North Sea cycle route. So I took the ferry, because obviously you can't cycle over the North Sea. But I knew that much. I took the ferry to the Hook of Holland, and then I cycled over a period of about 10 days all the way to Göteborg, and then across to Stockholm. And I spent a very happy, I think nearly 6 months, 5.5 months at Handelshögskolan, doing nothing really, reading and working stuff out, trying to get laid. It was just before I met my wife. So I got laid a bit, which didn't happen a lot in London. It was good. It was really good, yeah. In fact, the thought occurred to me that if in my various conquests while I'm here, that my daughter or son now, half Swedish daughter or son, would be nearly 18, right? That kind of spooked me a little bit there. So I was at Handels for about 6 months. It was a fantastic time. And I kind of you have space to think for a little while. I'd been an academic as a PhD and an assistant professor for nearly 10 years then. And so I made some choices. And the choices I made were to focus on brands. That was going to be my career topic. And also I decided to stay a professor but not to be an academic anymore. I'd had enough of publishing in a couple of top journals with big papers. And I increasingly found it dissatisfying, pointless, irrelevant, not worthy of my time. And so I decided not to do it anymore. So I had enough research to basically, ramp through my career, but I decided I was going to just start working pretty much as my own consultant. And so what I did over the next 17, nearly 18 years is I went and worked for lots of big brands all over the world. A lot in Europe, a few in Australia, a few in America. But I basically went and did work. And some of these projects are shorter, but most of the brands here would be multi-year projects. And not just, teaching courses and giving talks, working shoulder to shoulder with clients on proper planning stuff, which is what I really wanted to do. And that's what I ended up doing. Not always massively successfully, I have to say. But, with a great degree of, responsibility and pleasure working with proper marketers. And so what I thought I'd do with my talk is tell you about what I learned between my last trip to Stockholm 17 years ago. I never came back, in case any of the women were still here. And now, 17 years later, coming back to Stockholm after all this time. And what I'm going to talk about specifically is brand strategy and what it really looks like and how it's done, at least in my experience, and what works. And I'm going to look at brand strategy from the point of view of answering 5 questions and kind of ignoring a 6th question that we'll get onto at the end, okay? So it's very helpful, I think, in most situations to start at the beginning. So let's start at the beginning. So this is Neil McElroy. Neil McElroy is famous because he was the first head of NATO. But before he was the first head of NATO, that's why he's on the front cover of Time, in an earlier version of himself when he was in his late 20s, he invented brand management, which is it's not quite the same, I guess, as being the head of NATO, but he invented brand management. And at the time, McElroy was the marketing manager for a product called Camay, part of the soap division. And what he had observed over his 2 or 3 years working on Camay, which was a hot soap brand at the time, was that it was being neglected because P&G had its blockbuster brand, which was Ivory. And the team within the soap division were pretty much focused on Ivory and didn't really spend a lot of time on Camay, which meant that Camay didn't do as well as it could. And McElroy sat down and wrote a memo one evening, a 3-page memo, which he sent to the CEO saying, essentially, we've got this wrong. And what we should do is split the soap division into 2 different teams of brand men, because back then, so long ago, 1933, women weren't present in the office. Brand men who would be dedicated to one brand or another. And they would treat Ivory or Camay as a competitor, almost, and be dedicated in that way. And the 3-page memo that he typed up in that May afternoon, which was sent to the CEO, is now on display in Cincinnati in P&G's headquarters. And it lays out the duties of a brand man. And it turns out to be incredibly relevant today. And one of the themes that you've heard this morning, which I will repeat, is we're the only discipline as marketers that would look at something from 1931 and go, well, that can't be relevant. It wasn't Facebook in 1931. It's totally fucking relevant. In fact, I would argue that what he says in this 3-page memo is superior to any of the brand management systems operating currently in Sweden. Prove me wrong later. It's still best practice. Yeah? There's no reason we can't have an 80-year-old theory that is still applicable today. It's just we move around and think everything changes, when in reality, this is still incredibly relevant. What does McElroy say in that memo? He says essentially that brand management is 4 things. The first thing he says that a brand man should do is study the past in order to find out the trouble. This is, very 1930s language, but you get the idea. Then he says, after uncovering weakness, develop a plan that can be applied to this local sore spot. Okay? Number 3, outline this plan in detail. Number 4, prepare sales help and other material for carrying out the plan. And 5, keep whatever records are necessary and make field studies to determine whether the plan has worked. Okay? And I like this very much. I still base my MBA course in brand management around it. I still think it's what's missing from most brand management teams. First, what McElroy is saying is do the diagnosis. Work out what's going on in the field. Get the data to understand and diagnose the problem. Next, develop a strategy and outline this strategy so that we have a plan of action. Next, prepare the sales help and other material, the tactical stuff that will deliver the strategy, and then no surprise at the end. Keep whatever records are necessary to see if the stuff that we said we were going to change or improve or reduce has been improved or reduced or changed. Yeah? That's it. And this is a system of brand management that isn't really rocket science, and yet I rarely see played out in most companies. So, putting it in a more 21st century way, here's how you manage a brand. You do diagnosis first, then you develop your strategy, and then you come up with your tactics. Yeah? 1, 2, 3. Could not be more simple. There are a couple of catches. And tactics I'm going to define as the 4 Ps. You define them however you want. It doesn't matter. I still think the 4 Ps work very well. And when we talk about tactics, we talk about 4 things. We talk about price, product development, distribution, and of course we talk about communications. Yeah? But you define them as you wish. The tactical weaponry by which we will influence the customer. Now, the first thing to say is these are multiplicative. Yeah? Multiplicative, which is a fancy academic way of saying if you fuck one of them up, you are fucked completely. Okay? That's the layman's definition of multiplicative. If you multiply anything by 0, it's going to be 0. No matter how good your tactical agencies are, if your strategy is not correct, you're dead. If your diagnosis is wrong, it doesn't matter how good your strategic thinking is, your map is wrong, so your armies are going to get killed later. There isn't a way to fix it. So what you have to do is spread your resources across the 3. So none of them are perfect, perhaps, but all of them have been done 7 or 8 out of 10. Because 7 times 7 times 7 is a lot bigger number, trust me, I've got a PhD, than 10 plus 10 plus times 0. So weight them about equally, especially the first year, when you're fixing a brand or you're a new brand manager role or you've got a new client. Now, of course, that's not how it really looks in Sweden or anywhere else, but especially from my limited knowledge again in Sweden. We don't really see, first of all, tactics. No one talks about pricing anymore. You won't see a slide on pricing today, even on product development. You certainly won't see anything on distribution. What you'll see are slides about advertising, communication, digital marketing. And that's because we live in what I would call communification era of marketing. We don't really give a fuck anymore about the other P's. Most of our conferences are obsessed with communications, yeah? Nothing wrong with communications, it's just not that important. And it's only part of our job. And yet we've become obsessed with it to the point where if you ask a senior CMO, for example, well, why are the marketers not involved in pricing? In my experience of this, one CMO said to me last year, have you seen them? Yeah? Would you put them in charge of pricing? Yeah? It's the coloring in department. Yeah? That's the word she used to describe them. Yeah? They haven't got the quantitative skills to do pricing, so we're going to give it to someone else. Now that's a shame because pricing is significantly part of our marketing job. But we'd rather talk about fucking digital communications platforms than pricing or omni-channel distribution and so on. And also, to be fair, we don't really see this in most companies. It's very rare. It might be simple, but it's not happening. We see very little diagnosis. I very rarely encounter any actual strategy inside even big brands. And what we get is this, yeah? Just giant fucking tactical obsessions with different platforms and different decisions about what logo and which color and how much should I spend on Facebook versus how much I should spend on TV. It's not that important. Ultimately, it's about 5 or 6% of the brand challenge. It's not an unimportant 5 or 6%, but it's occupying us at the expense of bigger, more important discussions. And so the point about strategy before we get into it is it can't exist without first decent diagnosis. And also, I don't want to talk about tactics at all because they bore me and they should bore you. There's very little money in it either, right? Agencies do that work and they earn about 40 to 80% less than brand managers on the client side. It's a subsidiary task, okay? Done very well by agencies. Let them do their work, yeah? We should focus upstream on getting strategy right first. And with those caveats, let's talk a little bit about what strategy looks like. Because you hear a lot, strategy, we have to have strategy. And no one ever fucking explains what it is, right? And then some idiot from Bain or McKinsey comes in and razzle-dazzles you for fucking 10 million krona, and it's game over, yeah? So let me make that clear from the start. Strategy isn't hiring Deloitte to come in and advise you on brand strategy, yeah? That's not what it is. It's also not your agency helping you with this. They want us from upstream, and you love them for doing it, and to be fair, they have to do it because most clients couldn't find their ass with both hands, so they had some strategy. But this is really the job of the client, yeah? If you knew what you were doing, which some of you do, I hope, you would be doing this. The agency isn't well positioned to do this. This is a client-side job. So, what diagnosis is? It's a map of the market, of the segments, of the brand, of the competitors. Diagnosis is fundamentally just a map. And I often say to my clients, I want you to pretend that you're generals in a tent on the top of a hill, yeah? Because that's what strategy is, that's where it came from, yeah? It comes from military thinking. I think stratos means general or something, yeah? It's a military thing. So I always say to my clients, you are in a tent with the other generals looking at the map, literally, yeah? Get out of the office, yeah? And spend a couple of days actually developing the strategy, first of all. And I like that metaphor as well, because if at some point in the real Roman era, the generals were at the top of the hill working on the strategy, and the military, the artillery or the fucking cavalry walked into the tent, an archer goes into the tent with the Roman generals and says, look, where do you want me to fire this arrow? Which bow do you want me to use, right? The Roman generals would turn around and chop his fucking head off, right? Because he's moving up the chain of command and getting it all fucked up, right? Or if it was, a decent general, he'd say, go back down the hill because we haven't finished our strategy yet. We'll come down the hill when we're ready and we'll tell you where to fire your fucking bow. Yeah? Get back in your little box. My point is, that's what you must do. You must not let tactics infect strategy. Yeah? You cannot have a Facebook strategy. It's a contradiction in terms. Yeah? Doesn't mean Facebook is not a great tactical tool, but it means it's down the hill. And until you have your strategy, you cannot do this other stuff. Yeah? You can't have a TV or a radio strategy either. Strategy first, tactics next. And again, without the plan, without the diagnosis, the strategy is not possible. So, I think brand strategy is answering 5 questions. I don't even think you have to answer them correctly. Fuck, I'm close to the end of my consulting career. I don't even care anymore in terms of, is it the right answer? Fuck, I don't care. The bar is so low. It's so fucking low, right? If you can have 5 answers, random answers to these 5 questions, you'll be in the top 10% of brand managers in Sweden. Yeah? I'm not fucking joking. I'm not joking. That's how bad it is, right? That's how bad it is. The obsession with tactics, the lack of strategy. Now, don't get me wrong. There are companies that have it, but when you discover it, you're kind of like pleasantly surprised. You're like, ooh, that's actually a strategy. Yeah? Someone actually knows what they're doing. You know what I mean? That's, it's pleasant. So, here are what I think are the 5 questions you need to answer. The first answer is, how many brands should I operate? Yeah? In the broadest sense of the word. I've probably got more than one brand. How many of them should I be using in the current battle ahead? Number 2, what customers or which customers will be targeted? And that has become a very complex question, as you'll see. What is our position to those targets we have chosen to go after? Defining position as broadly or as narrowly as you like. What do you want to be the communication, the message, the credo to that particular target? What do you want them to think? What are the brand codes? What are the ways in which we will make ourselves distinctive in this marketplace? And we'll come back to that one. And finally, what are the strategic objectives? Yeah? What are the objectives for our work for the year ahead? If you can answer those 5 questions for 2020, where are we now? 2020, because 2019's over, as you all know. From a marketing point of view, it should just be wheels moving now. We're now increasingly turning our attention to 2020. You have to answer these 5 questions to have a strategy. So let's answer them one at a time, and I'll try and give you practical examples where I can of how I think it's been done well. So, which brands will I operate? So my big hero is a guy called Alan Mulally, who used to be the CEO of Ford. Mulally was passed over for the Boeing CEO's job and then was offered the job at Ford. And I've actually spoken to him a couple of times. He's a terrific fellow, and he describes the day that he joins Ford as the greatest day of his life because he's an engineer. He likes cars and stuff. And when he arrives, Ford is actually a house of brands. It owns a ton of brands. This is going back now to 2004. And so Mulally describes the morning how each of the big car brands tried to convince the new CEO to drive their top-end model. And he just had the time of his life. But his afternoon he described as less enjoyable because he went upstairs and discovered for the first time that Ford had lost $17 billion for the year, and he would have to announce that in about a week's time. And even by Ford standards, that's a giant amount of money. And so it's what Mulally does next that makes him special. He sells Jaguar and Land Rover to Tata Motors, sells Aston Martin to private equity, as you know, sells Volvo to the Chinese, shuts down Mercury, and it leaves him with a tiny brand called Lincoln, which is used for chauffeurs and other things. And essentially, he goes back to being a branded house, just being Ford. Why would a man that's just lost $17 billion get rid of 5/6 of his brands for a tiny amount of money? He sold them for almost nothing. And the answer is because once he could get rid of those, he could start making money again. In 2014, which is the year Mulally retired, he retired with an announcement that very handily Ford had made a profit of $17 billion. Less brands makes you more money. Why does it make you more money? More focus, less cost, clearer strategy. Yeah? All the things that we're now beginning to realize hurt us about having too many brands. This is Vilt. Many of you will recognize it. I checked, it was in the store this morning up the road. It's the world's leading hair depilatory brand. So for 100 years, it's 100 years old. Vilt has been used to remove hair from legs and other parts of your body where you don't wear hair. Ladies, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's the world's leading brand. It's owned by Reckitt Benckiser. Yeah? A new trend has been emerging, though, for the last 10 years that Reckitt Benckiser have become aware of, which is more and more men have been buying Vilt. This is how it looks today. It's a very modern brand. You put it on your legs, the hair comes off. And Reckitt have noticed a genuine increase in sales. And when they've done a little bit of work with scanner data, they've discovered that men are buying Vilt. Why are men buying Vilt? It's become trendy to use, I believe the official terminology is to have a shaven haven. Yeah? The influence of pornographic films is such that I'm reliably informed most of the men now haven't got those big, massive urban sprawls that we used to have in the 1970s, yeah? It's a very clean world, yeah? Looks a bit like this. Thank God we're in Sweden. I couldn't do this talk in Denmark. I will be giving out these slides, don't worry. No one took a photograph. That was the weird one. Right? So you know the story. So Reckitt Benckiser say, listen, men are already buying this women's product. Let's make a men's hair removal product just for them. And if you come from the 80s or 90s, you know what happens. We'll give it a really macho name like Tank. And then just to instill this is definitely not a feminine thing or anything else, we'll put a big picture of a tank on the front. And then a guy that's definitely not in any way feminine on the front. Oh, you're definitely not being feminine here. Buy Tank and remove all your hair in a masculine way, right? That's not what they did. That would be a 1990s or noughties answer. What they did was they called it Vilt for Men and launched it. It's a very, very 2018 story. Why did Reckitt Benckiser not create a brand for men? Because, and I quote one of their senior marketers, we're not allowed to create any more brands. Why are we not allowed to create any more brands? Because we've had too many, we've killed a bunch, we can't start growing them again. And we don't think we need another brand to sell men this product. We just need to put it in a different part of the store and write for men underneath it. It's a very 2018 story. Do you lose a little bit of money because it's not called Tank? You do, you lose a few sales. But the focus and the profitability and the growth implications of this far outweigh that. And we've seen it again and again. You remember Google had Picasa, and then suddenly Picasa was gone. It was their photographic app, and it was Google Photos. You see what's been happening, yeah? Big, smart marketing leaders around the world have been killing brands and focusing back towards less. If you take the famous Arca Jocke Meister brand relationship spectrum, we used to have basically a house of brands. Picasa is an endorsed mark. What we've done is got rid of it and moved to essentially a branded house, different identity, yeah? So we've gone all the way across the spectrum. So we can have less brands and more focus. Coca-Cola have gone on a similar journey over the last 2 years. We used to have Coke Zero, right? It's a sub-brand. We've now got Coca-Cola with zero sugar. That's by Coca-Cola's definition, a variant. We've gone from having a sub-brand back to the branded house, yeah? Why are we doing that? Because big, smart marketing companies have realized they have too many brands. When I was a young man studying marketing in the 80s, Unilever and P&G would have had between 5,000 and 6,000 brands operating globally. Today, between them, 35 brands generate $1 billion. That means about 75% of their total revenue comes from 35 brands. From 5,000 to 35 in a 30-year span. That's an amazing journey. And again, it tells you something about what we need to learn about brand architecture and brand portfolios. Less is more. You've all been acquiring and extending brands in your companies now for 20 years. If you haven't also been killing them, by now you've got too much. This is my favorite animal, the Rattus norvegicus, the brown rat. Yeah, it's the most successful mammal on the planet. There is literally right now a brown rat somewhere within 5 meters of you. They're everywhere, literally everywhere on the planet. Yeah. Why is the brown rat so successful? The brown rat is successful because it practices infanticide. It eats its own babies. So the average mother rat will have 3 litters a year and average 6 pups. And when the dam rat, the mother rat, is cold or hungry or stressed, she will pick out the weakest runt in the litter and she will kill and consume it. And in many cases, she will eat half of her own progeny. Why does a mother rat kill her own babies? Mother rat, the rat, only has 2 directives in life. 1, she must live to breed again. And 2, as many of her progeny as possible must survive so they can also breed. What is the point of this grotesque post-lunch story? Turn the pups into the brands and products in your company, and turn the mother rat into your company. Too many pups suckling on the corporate teat kills everything. Yeah? Learn to kill. Killing is good. Yeah? In marketing, okay? Marketers like to create. It's the wrong approach. Too many of you are Buddhist about brands. You think all life is wonderful, more life is fantastic. Create more brands. Let's create a new brand. How exciting is that? It's the wrong religion for the era we live in. Yeah? More of you should worship Shiva. Yeah? Learn to kill. I've killed more than 200 brands in my consulting career, and so far I've been involved in the creation of 2. Yeah? That's a good ratio. Kill 100, and you get a license to create 1. Your company needs more brands like a hole in the fucking head. Yeah? It needs less. Learn to kill. Killing is good. Yeah? Killing will help your company to grow. Creating is bad. Creating is stupid. It feels good. You don't need it. Well, maybe you do, but you have to have an amazing reason. I say to my clients, unless you're making industrial grade machine guns and baby toys, you can probably do this under the same brand. That's what the lessons of brand architecture have taught us, yeah? Unless there's a proper dynamic, you don't need multiple brands. You need less. When Alan Burnley left Ford, he made something else in his final speech, results presentation, that everybody missed. He got a lot of congratulations because he just made $17 billion. But he also said, if you judge me on profit, I've been a success. If you judge me on revenue, I've been an abject failure. Because if you look at the revenues of Ford during his tenure, they never made more money than in that year when they lost $17 billion. Those revenues of $170 billion were never reached again. And this is a key point. If you want more revenue, you should create more brands and run a load of sales promotions too. Because you're operating on the mistaken idea that revenue and sales are the lifeblood of a business. No, they're fucking not. Profit is the lifeblood of a business. And it's a very important point for marketers. If you look at the revenue signpost and the brand signpost, they usually point in opposite directions. But if you look at the profit signpost and the brand signpost, more often than not, they're actually pointing in the same direction. Don't chase the revenue. Revenue is not the goal. Profit, sustainable profit is the goal. All right, number 2. So a big one, as we said already, which customers will I target? So I come from a very traditional marketing background. I was trained in England, then I was trained in America. I believe in the holy trinity of marketing. I think you segment, then you target, and then you position. But I kept going to international conferences, and you'd meet very senior, very experienced, very good marketers who said the opposite. Bruce McCall, who at the time was the chief marketing officer at Mars, would get up and say things like, I'm not a great believer in targeting. Our target is 7 billion people sitting on this planet. Our task is to reach as many people as we can. That's the opposite of targeting, or it's the totality of targeting, right? It's going after everyone. And then last year, Mark Pritchard, the most important marketer in the world, the chief brand officer at P&G, said pretty much the same thing. We targeted too much. and we went too narrow. Yeah? We targeted too much. Senior marketers have started to say, we're not going to target either as much or at all. Why are they doing it? Well, they're doing it because of Professor Byron Sharp, the head of the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, who's written the most famous book on branding, How Brands Grow. And in that book, one of the precepts is he talks about sophisticated mass marketing. It doesn't mean targeting everyone, nor does it mean targeting everyone the same, but it means understanding the heterogeneity in your market and then catering for only the differences that matter. His argument is most segmentation is fundamentally not that different. From segment 1 to 2 to 3, actually, they're more similar than they are different, and I think he's correct. Or we're using dumb demographic segmentation and treating millennials like they're somehow different from Generation X, when every piece of data has shown us that is not true. That a Gen Xer is as likely to behave like a millennial as another millennial. The only use of millennials to marketers is to identify those that aren't very good. If they present you with any form of segmentation, which includes we're going after millennials, that tells you something about the quality of the marketing plan they're in. So he makes a good point. But I think sometimes the Ehrenberg Bass Influence School goes too far or is misinterpreted and is taken into good old-fashioned mass marketing. But it makes your life as a marketer now very difficult. Because originally we had Henry Ford, every car as long as it's black, good old-fashioned mass marketing. I'm part of a traditional group that said segment, target, position. And by the way, I'm by no means the most extreme advocate of this. If you look at what you can do with Facebook and with lookalike targeting now, the granularity is spectacular, yeah? So, in the era where targeting has become even more microscopic, it's incredible to have an influential marketer like Professor Sharp trying to pull the marketing industry back towards, albeit sophisticated, mass marketing. And so just over a year ago, we had a debate about this very topic, about the value of targeting versus sophisticated mass marketing. And the Festival of Marketing, which is part of the Marketing Week stable, has a big festival in October every year in Tobacco Dock. We got 4,000 marketers in a room. We were each given a bit of time to discuss our ideas and debate, and then the audience was allowed to vote. Did they believe in targeting, or did they believe in sophisticated mass marketing? Now, it wouldn't be appropriate to talk about the outcome of that vote here, okay? It was a heated debate, and I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but, I smashed him. I did smash him. That's, But I don't want to go on about it too much. But, I did smash him, So who's right? Should we continue to segment, target, and position? Or should we really go after everyone in the category with some sophistication, but basically try and hit everyone? I'm pretty sure a year and a bit later on from our debate, I now appreciate who has the right answer. I think it's these two boys. And so I think Peter Field and Les Burnett work becomes the most powerful work of our time. I think in your careers and my career as marketers, this is the work that will shape us in the next 10 or 15 years. And if you haven't read their stuff yet, I strongly encourage you to do so. It is, I think, the great thinking of at least my marketing time. They've written a series of books. Probably the best one is still the long and the short of it, but you can choose. They're two very old account planners from two different London agencies. But they also have been running the Effectiveness Awards in the UK now for almost 30 years. And that's given them a treasure trove of data to look at what are the most effective campaigns in the UK and what are the lessons we can take from that. And the big lesson they've taken from it is this very famous chart that I'm sure you're aware of, but if you're not aware of, you need to be aware of it. I think it's super important. So, what are we all looking for is ultimately sales uplift over time. And what Field and Burnett have observed is that there are two different patterns that you can see going on in the data. So the first pattern is what they term sales activation, short-term boosts, which as you can see, When you embark upon them and you press the button, they give you immediate surge in sales, but inevitably when you have to take your foot off the pedal, things will return back before you press the button again. Now this can be sales promotion, but it doesn't have to be. This is anything that involves ROI calculations, anything where I would term this as being, you ask someone in the office, how's the campaign going? And they shout down the corridor, Charlie, what's our numbers today? Ooh, we're up 12%, yeah? That's the sort of immediate short-term activation they're talking about. Now, the other pattern they observe is what they call longer-term brand building. Yeah? Now, their main contention is, which builds over time, as you can see, is that most companies don't think beyond a 12-month window. In fact, most are sub-12 months. If you look at the average planning or tactical execution, most brands sit in a 3 to 6 month window. Now, if you sit in that window, here's what you would say. What makes more sense? Should I spend my money on short-term activation or longer-term brand building? From a standing start, the answer is obviously go short-term. The ROI would give me 2-3 times the return. ROI is an outdated metric for exactly the point we're about to get to. It's always a victim of shorter-term return calculations. We loved it 10 years ago. It sends you in the wrong direction. This is efficiency. Nothing wrong with a bit of efficiency, nothing wrong with a bit of ROI, but it misses effectiveness, longer-term effectiveness, in the sense that once you have a 3, 4, 5-year joined-up strategy, you begin to see the value in taking a longer-term, multi-year perspective. And brand building begins to pay back, yeah? As opposed to that short-term activation that gives you good ROI, but doesn't ultimately get you anywhere. Now, don't mistake what they say. This isn't some simplistic, don't do that, do this. Field and Burnett are practical. They've mastered thousands of campaigns. What they say is there is no short or long without each other. Yeah? You don't have long term if you haven't got short. So they're not saying don't do the red. What they're saying is do the red and do the green. Now that's a key point because I have worked with many CMOs and there's 3 types. There's the type that is in love with working with agencies, believes in the green line, invests heavily in communications, above the line, creativity, emotion, and gets fired within 18 months because the numbers aren't there. Then there's the short-term Charlie. He comes in and shoves all of his money into digital, gets good ROI, does very well for the first year, but gets fired a year and a half later because the brand's not going anywhere. And then there's that 10%, the all-stars, the ones that do zero-based budgeting and work out how to move enough money to pay the short-term piper, but have some left over to build the long-term story. Proper joined up multi-year budgeting, ticking the short-term financial expectations, laying the long-term value, which is what marketing budgeting is really meant to be all about. Or to put it another way, we want to water the tree, if your brand is a tree, so we can pick the fruit. But as we see so many times, as we spend less and less money on brand building and more on picking the fruit themselves begin to disappear. So here's the key point and why this is in the targeting section. You have to do both. And if you read the different work of Field and Burnett, there is an amazing implication within it. If we look at the short-term stuff, and you look at all the thousands of campaigns they've studied that are after short-term activation, you have a number of targeting options. You could target existing customers, you could target non-customers, or you could target everyone. In those situations, the best return is to target customer segments. I was right. Segmentation gives you the best return. But if you look at the long-term brand building stuff, the best option is to go after non-customers, is to hit everyone with a nuclear explosion of your brand. Professor Sharp was right. Mass marketing gives you the best return. The answer to the question, do you target or do you go mass, is yes, you want to do both. And Field and Burnett's ratio suggests that you should do 60% non-targeted broad and 40% short-term targeted. Now that varies greatly by category and the state of your brand, but it gives you a nice balance to consider. So, in summary, we're both kind of right. Shorter term activation, approximately 40% of your budget, more granular segments, targeted. These are product-based offers. This is old-fashioned positioning statements when I do it with clients. I would lead with digital comms just because of the targeting capabilities, which are just usually, not always, so much more advantageous. And I'd approach this every year as a new entrepreneurial mission. For the other 60% or whatever it might be, I'm going to go with top of funnel. I'm going to go with standard tools, more likely. Not always, depending on the target segment. TV, out of home, radio, print. And I'm going to have a 5-year plan for this. And I'm going to use my brand tracking to show that I'm growing various things over, measure it every year, but multi-year consistency. And I think some brands are doing it well. If you look at Uber, at least in Australia, I think they've got it worked out. They're still doing short-term targeted activations with particular product codes and promotions. But more than 60% of their budget is devoted to an emotional message about see you soon, aimed at everyone in Australia, beautiful TV work, digital video as well, saying an outdoor, tons of outdoor, basically just showing people getting out of a car to meet their family. See you soon. Emotion, targeting everyone, top of funnel, product-based, targeted digital stuff on the other side. One of the brands I work with is Westpac. It's a very big bank, bigger than any of the Swedish banks. I checked this morning, it's actually bigger than all of them. Westpac's a giant bank. We do both, and we're on this long-term mission working with Les Binet in particular. We do short-term, we have our own in-house programmatic team, and we're following particular customers who hypothetically might be booking a holiday in Expedia, and if they were doing that, the ad they'll get to one side is a product-based promotion of one of our particular credit card products. But I can't say exactly how much, but significantly less than 35% is being spent on that. And the rest of it is going on TV, outdoor, big budget, emotional stuff. The brand positioning of Westpac is help. We help our customers. We're on a 5-year mission to tell that story to everyone, literally everyone in the country, with emotional TVCs.
There is always someone for each of us, they say, and you'll be my someone forever and a day. I could search the world over until my life is through, but I know I'll never find another you. But if I should lose your love, dear, I don't know what I'd do, for I know I'll never find another you.
The Australian media's been asking us, what are you selling? And the answer is we're not selling anything. We're doing that with the short money. This is top of funnel, targeting everyone, emotional brand building. And I think the Vote Leave campaign deserves tons of credit too. They've done exactly the same thing. They had their outdoor, their buses with a general message about leaving the European Union if you're in the UK. And then we know from recent disclosures in the Houses of Parliament, 140,000 different targeted Facebook ads going after the psychographic targets of particular households in the UK. If you are particularly predisposed to messages of animal cruelty, we're going to suggest to you that the EU sponsors animal abuse. If you're a conservative and like British values, we're going to suggest the EU is going to ban your cup of tea. I don't fucking know where that comes from either. I'm going to tell you the EU is killing polar bears. Yeah? They're stifling innovation. They're making your grandma suffer. Whatever the button is that it takes. Brilliant targeted Facebook communications, 140,000 variants. Not as good as Trump with 5.9 million variants, but that's a different story. And then the non-dark stuff, top of funnel emotion. And it's worked. This is a very important chart. It shows you the average poll of polls in the UK about whether the British public wanted to remain or exit from the EU. And you'll see that, look, all this time, remaining was the priority until 2 weeks before the election, when the ability to target digitally with very persuasive messages, I believe, kicked in. And suddenly we saw that leap, which then decayed and leaves us back here where the majority of British people still want to remain in the EU. It is brilliant communications planning, whatever you might think of the outcome. Currently, incidentally, 56% of British people want to stay in the European Union, but that's because they haven't been exposed to any ads suggesting that the EU is going to be killing bulls anytime soon. It's brilliant communications. So, long and short. Next two questions, I'll put them together. What will be the position and what are the brand codes? And these two questions have slightly connected topics. What will be the position is sometimes mistakenly linked to differentiation, which is a very debatable concept at the moment. We'll come to that. What are the brand codes is another way of talking about distinctiveness. You have to be clear on these things being very different from each other, okay? Distinctiveness is just looking like yourself. Is just being recognized as who you are and immediately being connected in the consumer's head with existence. Differentiation, or words associated with that topic, are how do you represent yourselves? What do you stand for? What do you mean in the head of the customer? If they recognize you and see you as distinct, how are you distinct? Let's do distinctiveness first. So, brands have codes. Well-run brands have codes. Every brand has a logo, but if you run a brand well, or it's an old brand and it was run well previously, there are usually other symbolic distinctive assets. Colors, shapes, patterns, motifs, sometimes a sound, whatever it might be, codes by which customers will recognize you immediately. Just to demonstrate, let's go through some examples. You shout out the brand each time. I've chosen codes, not the logo, but codes. Does anyone recognize this brand code? Yeah, it's like an eye test. It will get harder. This one. Hermes, very good. This one. Rolex. This one. No, it's a shit projector. It's Ferrari. Close. This one. Cartier, very good. And this one? Very easy. Like, the bottom row is much harder, as you'll remember from your last trip to the opticians. This one. Kenzo, very good. This one. Coke. This one, the photographer. It's Marc Jacobs. This one. Peter Alexander, it's an Aussie one. This color. Cadbury. This color. Clico, it's a bad projector. These are very important assets to a brand. When we use them properly, we can make our brands distinctive. This is an ad we did many years ago. Does anyone recognize it? I've taken the product shot out. Kenzo. How do you know it's Kenzo? Well, you recognize it because we codified the shit out of it. That's lacquer red. That's the color code of Kenzo. That's the poppy, the flower code of Kenzo. And that's an Asian in Paris. That's the third code from Takada Kenzo, who moved from Japan to Paris. They're the three codes that we use along with the logo. No one's telling you that's not a beautiful ad, but it's codified. And it's better than most of the ads you see in Sweden, which are fabulously creative and totally fucking pointless. 86% pointless. Here's how you make your ads, okay? Here's how they're consumed. It's true. Your brand is a little thing. You spent 5 months designing the fucker, it was gone in 2 seconds. This is the fundamental error, in my experience, everybody makes. Your brand's a little fucking thing. That's not a negative thing, it's just realism, yeah? The way you design those fuckers, the way you look at them, the way you screen them, the test them, review them, change them. Ooh, let's change the ethnicity by 2%, right? This is what I have learned from direct experience with big billion-dollar brands. Get a big fucking mallet that's as obvious as fucking possible and hit the customer over the head with it at least a dozen times and then hit them again. It isn't fucking art. It's advertising and we came to sell. And if they don't know it's you, it's fucking over before it began. The first rule of branding, first they must know that it's me or everything is pointless. We have good research from Ehrenberg Bass to demonstrate this. If you take 10 ads, 40% will be recalled the next day. So these are 10 TV ads exposed to a consumer that was in the room when they were delivered. 40% will be able to remember something about the ad. But when you ask them of those 40% of ads, which brand was sponsoring that ad Again, only 40% of the 40% can be recalled, which leaves you with a stunning result that 16% of ads have got any chance of working at all 24 hours later, and the other 86% are totally fucking pointless. Totally pointless. The point about codification is it doesn't improve the first ratio, it improves the second. If you codify the shit out of things, customers can attribute your brand to that material much more quickly. And we have a chance of increasing that second calculation, which is a fantastically important maximizer. One other element with codes. I spent 15 years working with LVMH in Paris. When you've got a really old brand, we have a real problem. Louis Vuitton is 170 years old. We have to get a 22-year-old girl living here in Stockholm or Göteborg to think it's the most fashionable, gorgeous brand in the world, and we're 3 times the age of a living human. So how do we do it? We could create something completely new, but if we do that, we rupture the authenticity of the brand. And so we play with codes in order to signal to them we are both old and we are new. So about 15 years ago, we asked Takada, no we didn't, we asked Murakami, the famous manga artist from Japan, to reinterpret Monogram. And he gave us this, which many people in Paris were so aghast at, they passed out, right? The point was, this is one of our best-selling collections of all time. More importantly, it's a magic trick. It's a very important magic trick. Because what is it? It's new and it's old. It's heritage and it's creativity. It's both. It's revitalization. By playing with codes, provided they're well established, you can keep a brand fresh. You can revitalize it. With Dom Perignon, the best thing we ever did was take in that iconic bottle and l'étiquette, the shield, and begin to play with it. Yeah, old and new. It's a magic trick that great brands can play. But most brands don't do that. Here's 4 ads from 4 different perfume brands. Look how similar they are. All I've done is taken the logo out. They are fucking pointless. Yeah? They are triumphs of genericism. These are current perfume ads for big brands. You don't know who they are. And all I did was take the logo out. The brands have great codes. They have wonderful assets. They're not being used by the agency or by the client because they're not good enough. Most brands don't use their codes because they have no idea what their codes are, because they have too many codes to apply, because advertising agencies are often stupid. It's true. I have to be honest with you. My first advice to clients when I work with them is the first level of success is your agency will come to you and tell you you're overdoing the purple. When that happens, let me know. We've reached level 1 of success. We've got 9 more fucking levels to go. Yeah? No, this is not me bullshitting on a stage, right? I've said this to at least 10 clients, and 8 clients have said, guess what? Agency just told me we're overusing the purple. I'm like, well done. Stage 1 is complete. Let's move on, right? The mallet has only just fucking begun. Agencies don't get it. It's not agency's fault. Clients should squeeze them hard. Show me the fucking codes. Show me the codes. When we were a long time ago in Paris successful, unless you could show us 3 codes in a print ad, you never got the money. That was a great rule. It was a great rule. Hermes had the same rule. It was a great rule. Unless you can codify it, show me 3 codes, go back and do it again. It doesn't limit creativity. It just makes it harder. The last one is the most important. The brand becomes bored with their codes. So I work for Veuve Clicquot, the great champagne brand. And one of the things we did a brand workship about 10 years ago. Went to Hôtel du Marc, which is in the middle of Champagne, the home of the brand. And when I used to do these brand sessions with brands, I insist we do it at the home of the brand. I'd ask the CEO to be there, and we'd have the sort of top 15. And the first thing you do on day 1 of the brand session is say, be selfish. What do you all want to get out of these 2 days we're going to work on the brand? And we went around the room, and everybody said the same thing. I want to move away from yellow. We're overusing Clicquot yellow. There's too much yellow. The whole room said the same thing. And so by the end of it, I was like, oh, fuck, you're all fucking lunatics, But when you talk to them a bit more about, so why do you want to move away from your greatest asset? They all said the same thing. They come to work every day on a yellow bicycle. They sit in front of a screen which is yellow. They have a mouse which is yellow, a yellow mouse pad. They design stuff that's yellow. And after about 15 years of this, they go, too much yellow. Now, you in the room know that if you're at Cafe Opera, my old hanging out joint, which is still there, I'm delighted to see. You're at Cafe Opera on a Thursday night with your girlfriends and you need a drink and there's 4 of you. You look across the bar and you go, oh, that yellow of Clicquot just leaps down. You go, a bottle of Clicquot. You know that's magic, right? You know more than the brand team do, yeah? They've forgotten that they're not the customer. And I took a very important lesson from this that I've delivered to all my clients since, which is overplay your codes. So much that your agency, then your own team thinks we're overdoing this. It's not the logo, these are the codes. And if you do that, there's a 1 in 50 chance a customer will notice. So do it some more. You can't overdo codes. First, they must know it's you. And most of your brands disappear into the fucking atmosphere because they're not codified enough. You need more. You need more. Codify the shit out of everything. It's one of the most important lessons I've taken from my time. Now, the masters of this are Ehrenberg Bass. They have a wonderful book from Jenny on building distinctive brand assets, which is what they call codes. But they make a trade-off, which I think is not necessary. So in a very famous paper on evidence concerning the importance of perceived brand differentiation, our research challenges the central importance of differentiation to brand strategy. This leads us to question the importance of perceived and valued differentiation and to instead place distinctiveness at the center of brand strategy. Basically, it's all about distinctiveness and differentiation. Perception does not matter as much. This, in my opinion, is a flaw. Because you can be greedy here and you can actually have both. You don't need to push distinctiveness at the expense of differentiation or perception. You can be greedy and you can have both. If you look at how brands grow, this is how they define differentiation. And I've been very careful to use it directly from the text. Differentiation means different names. The brand is here. I know where it is. I have an account. It has my size. This is the only one in red. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's oversimplistic. Yeah? It's an attempt at dogma to say there isn't really differentiation, it's all distinctiveness. Now, in contrast, I prefer this, by the way, to the alternative. And the alternative is brand fucking purpose. Super trendy, super fucking pointless, highly unrealistic nonsense, which everyone's going to engage in because they're trendy and scared to say, I think this is cock. It's cock, yeah? Fearless girl, cock, total cock, yeah? Why is it cock? Because no one knows the name of the brand behind it. That would seem to be important for starters. And second, the brand behind it, which is called State Street, while they were busy telling everyone about how it was important to have female empowerment, they were paying women significantly less than men in the office and were fined by the US government for it. That's cock. You're going to tell me that we need to support female investors on boards and then underpay women in your own company? That just sounds like a basic error. Yeah? How can that be right? Gillette telling us how we all need to be better men. Yeah? The Gillette logo is right at the top of Foxborough Stadium right now. Foxborough Stadium is owned by a gentleman that's about to get caught in a massive sex trafficking scandal. Yeah? That would seem to be an inconsistency. Starbucks' brand mission is to inspire the human spirit. No mention of coffee, inspiring the human spirit. Cock. Overthought through cock. Nonsense. Overstated bullshit. Do you go to fucking Starbucks to inspire your human spirit? Maybe it's me. I go for a decent cup of coffee, a little bit of American, yeah, a little bit of quality. I like that about Starbucks, efficiency, but I don't go to inspire the human spirit, for fuck's sake. Verizon, their new brand purpose as of Monday, we're the pioneers of human ability. Now, some of you aren't native English speakers. What does human ability mean? Nobody fucking knows. Human ability, my ass. This bozo, I don't know who he is, but he's a bozo. He's got a good screen, I'll give him that, but what he's saying is total cock. Turn customers into fanatics, products into obsessions, employees into ambassadors, and brands into religions. 2002 rang, it wants its nonsense back, yeah? Brands are little things. That's not a bad thing to accept. They don't have a fucking purpose, yeah? They play a role in people's lives. And then we've got Hanneke Faber, the most senior Unilever manager in Europe, telling us that she wants to get rid of the brand manager role and replace it with brand activists. For fuck's sake, yeah? So you see my dilemma. I'm trapped between these two equally unappealing situations. The dogma that says all brands are perceived the same. Cock. Or this brand is so important, it's going to save the world, change gender, change everything. Equal amounts of cock. There is a middle path. We've lost that middle path. Brands aren't going to save the world, but they're more than just red and round and available. Brands stand for certain things. Is that differentiated? No, that's a straw man argument, and it always was. Brands have never owned attributes. There's no such thing as a USP. There never was. But picking certain associations, combining them with others, having more of that association than others, this is the game of branding. We've got lost in the weeds. I've seen some Swedish stuff over my years. We all lost the plot. We built these fucking pyramids made out of shit, right? We had brand books, totally fucking pointless, yeah? What is the point of brand positioning? Let us come back to the purpose. Let me be clear on that. That's shit. That's distracting shit. It makes you feel great because you've got like features and then functional benefits and emotional benefits and a brand persona. That makes you feel great. What is the point of positioning? What is the point? The point is, if she's my target customer, I've got two objectives. Number one, she needs to know that I exist or it's over. And number two, I want her to associate my brand with certain things. That's it. That's the whole game of branding in a nutshell. I want you to know that I exist and I want you to think that I'm this and this and this. That's what branding has been since the time of McElroy. All positioning is capturing the intention. The pyramids are just masturbation by marketing departments. They make you happy, but no one else even knows it's going on, right? You've got 2 or 3 associations, that's all. 2 or 3 things, and you're not gonna own them, they're not gonna be differentiated, but you're gonna push them to this customer because you're gonna drive awareness, consideration, preference, repurchase. So, and I'm telling you this not because I'm fucking on a stage. I've done this for 15 years with very large brands and it works for us. It's worked brilliantly for us, okay? When you do your brand positioning, stop writing pyramids and brand books, okay? You've got 3 or 4, and I want to use the word things, okay? Associations, attributes, whatever you want to call them. What are the 3 or 4 things you want your customer to think when they think about you, okay? Points of parity, maybe you just want to get into the category. Points of strength that you want to push more. Drivers of certain aspects of consumer behavior. Things that you're not going to own and they're not going to be unique, but maybe you can push it stronger and be clearer than your competitors in the market. The permutations matter. The 2 or 3 things you stand for matter. And then the degree of application matters even more. And then codes, just 3 or 4. You can have too many. A logo plus a couple of other things. Look at your archives. Yeah? Ask your creative people who have a better radar for this. Write down the codes. The position and the codes. If you need more than 1 page of paper, you've gone wrong. It's too much for the customer. Yeah? You're past the point of no return. On a page, positioning, codes. I've done this for brands generating significantly more than 1 billion or 2 billion euros. Yeah? It takes real strength to have less. Any moron can produce a 25-page brand book. But to finish the work with just 1 page, it's a different game. But that's the thing that might work. I can't show you most of the work I've done because, clients get pissed off if you get their documents out and stuff. But the exception is Sephora. I did the work for Sephora for Christelle Apente, the CEO, about 8-9 years ago in Paris. We united the American and French teams. We did a lot of research. We did a lot of historical work. We brought the founder back. And we came up with a single page to capture the brand. Unfortunately, it's in the public realm, so I can show it to you. And I think it's a good example of the 25 brands I've been involved in positioning in my time. So there are 4 genes in the Sephora DNA, whatever you want to call it, in this case, positioning. Amazing beauty selection. We have a width of selection. Yeah? It's linear, but it's wider than anyone else's. Yeah? Both in terms of small brands you haven't heard of, and also just having the range of product features. If you like Hermes beauty, we've got everything from Hermes. And there's brands you've never heard of, like Tatcha, that are hot and new, that complement the width. Freedom to experience. Sephora is a reaction to department stores where you're not allowed to touch or smell or feel or do anything. We want you to play with everything inside the store. We want freedom and transgression. We're a disruptive spirit. We were founded by a man who wanted to break things. We like the idea of doing things differently in the beauty industry and believe we can keep doing that. And finally, we're a fun place to learn, both for our staff and more importantly for our customers. They come to learn about new stuff, and we've spent tens of millions of euros on Sephora University to justify that fourth gene. Our codes, you shouldn't be able to miss them now. We've overplayed them significantly, I believe. Obviously our logo, and then 3 other codes: the flame, the calpinage, which is that black and white, and then finally a dash of red. These come from our history. They weren't very strong 8 years ago. Do you have a Sephora in Stockholm? I don't know, you should have. Go and look and see. You feel the DNA in the service experience. Go and look at the stores. You don't need the logo to know you're in Sephora, yeah? This has worked. What's the definition of work? I don't know, about another $4 billion a year since we started doing it, yeah? Distinctive and also meaningful. Nearly at the end. What is my strategic objective? Strategy, I believe, is elimination. Everyone's going to do something. And if you look at the definitions of strategy that have helped me the most, 2 stand out. The first one is Sun Tzu, from the original treatise of strategy. There are roads which must not be followed, armies which must not be attacked, towns which must not be besieged, positions which must not be contested. From the very beginning of strategy, strategy was deciding, what are you not going to do? Or as Michael Porter puts it, the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. The segments you don't target, the words you don't put in your positioning, the communication that you don't run, yeah? That's what will define you as a brand. Shit strategy, I think, takes about a day to put together, and then it ends up being a 45-minute presentation or a 28-page document. You've all seen those before, yeah? And it doesn't really make any fucking sense. Great strategy takes 3 or 4 months, off and on, to put together. But if it takes more than a page at the end, something has gone horribly wrong, yeah? And if people don't understand it, who work on the front line, you've got it wrong. This is Eisenhower explaining the D-Day strategy on D-Day to paratroopers, yeah? He didn't come up with it that morning. They'd spent about 9 months working out in the war rooms, but it was simple enough and tight enough to direct the tactics, in this case the Marines, to do what they needed to do. And it literally was a single page of paper. Lots of complicated thinking to produce a simple output. I do work for the Effies now in New York, analyzing the Effies. I'm just starting some work now for the 50th anniversary. It's very interesting what we see. So the Effies are the ultimate award for marketing. Not for creativity, but for effectiveness with a supplied case study, yeah? And if you look at the Australian entries last year, we had about 200 entries. We gave 15 bronze, 22 silver, 6 gold, and only 1 grand Effie. And if you count the number of objectives that were in each submission, you see something very interesting that we're seeing now across even bigger markets. So the average submission to an Effie has 3.5 objectives driving the campaign. The silver, 2.5. Sorry, the bronze, 2.5. The silver, 2.4. The golds, 2.2. The grand Effie, just 2. There is a negative correlation between having more objectives and success. Less objectives. And these are the winners. These are the creme de la creme for Australia, right? We're not talking about all the shithouse brands that wouldn't even submit because they haven't got a fucking idea what they're doing. In those cases, you've either got no objectives, just like a do Facebook and cinema kind of want to have this kind of thing, right? 0 objectives. Or they've got 7 objectives or 9 or 12 or 42, yeah? The average shit plan. We asked the judges last year to rate each submission on simplicity. From 1 not very simple to 5 very simple. All of the finalists were extraordinarily simple. Bronze 4.2, silver 4.4, and all the gold winners 4.8. Simplicity, less objectives, is a fundamental challenge of brand management. Complexity never wins. I see brand building as a field full of boulders, yeah? You have to move the boulders from one field to another. And if you try and move all of them in a year, none of them will move. You pick the most important ones, the ones that you can achieve, and you move those boulders in year 1. There'll be other years and there'll be other objectives. Make choices. Make choices. The minute you have 5 or 6 objectives, you're actually not creating objectives. You're doing what the CEO of Procter & Gamble used to call making dreams that will never come true. you need objectives. These are actual objectives from actual clients of mine. There's usually one or two. I've disguised one. If you don't have this, you're not very good. And I can't be more binary than that. At some point in your strategy for the year, you should have something like this. The name of who you're going after, even if it's the whole market, the benchmark, the objective goal, and the date. I'm sorry, it's basic. It's missing 90% of the time. What's the fucking objective you're trying to achieve before we get to the tactics? And how will we measure it at the end of the year to see if you're successful? Finally, what's the right mix of digital and traditional media? The biggest question in marketing, let me attempt to answer it before I close. Before I do that, a reminder. If we weight diagnosis, strategy, and tactics equally, and we say that comms is 1/4 of a third, it should be worthy of about 5 minutes of this talk, and that's what it'll get, nothing more than that, yeah? And if these aren't correct, then this won't work. Let's remind ourselves of that. But given it's an important topic, let's address it. So, I think we all know digital media. It's Facebook, and it's Google, and it's Twitter, and so on. I struggle with traditional media, even though everyone talks about it. Maybe you can help me in Sweden. Give me, I don't know, what's the most famous or one example of a traditional media? What would you say, and how would you define it in Sweden? What would be a good example? Just shout it out. What's a traditional media for advertising? Outdoor, got to be there. What else? Print, yeah, news media, print. One more. TV, radio. That's what I'm talking about, see? So I think that's all horseshit, what you just said, with respect. I think you're part of this giant lie that no one's thought about for more than 2 seconds. Digital media, traditional media. So I walked around Stockholm very early this morning with jet lag. It seems to me you're very typical to every other European city. Somewhere between 70 and 80% of your outdoor is digital, right? Right? London's 72, Sydney's 78 now. You must be more than 50. You gotta be. I mean, I hardly saw any paper. There's no broadsheets. So, sorry, outdoor, it's fucking digital, right? I mean, it's digital. I don't know the numbers for your news media. I know the New York Times has 1.1 million newspaper subscribers, which is impressive. It's not half as impressive as the 3.3 million that subscribe to it digitally every day. New York Times makes 80% of its money from digital media. What the fuck are you talking about? News media, newspapers. Even in Australia, all of our newspapers make more money from digital than print now. It's a digital media. Radio. Last year, UK passed a threshold. More people are listening to radio today digitally than on a broadcast platform in the UK. It's about 54% now. Radio's digital. The fuck are we talking about? Digital, traditional. It's a childish discussion. Wasting our time with it. UK campaign of the year last year. Clearly it was KFC. So KFC, you may have read, had a problem. They hired DHL to be their distributor, and DHL isn't very good at delivering chickens, so the whole of the KFC network suddenly had no chickens, which is what we call a marketing problem, yeah? They had tons of negative publicity. It was a major news story. A lot of fat English people who really shouldn't be eating any more fried chicken talking about being angry about not getting enough fried chicken. Fortunately, they have a very good CMO, and the CMO ran a brilliant news media campaign in which he took a full page out in the newspapers and basically said, fuck, yeah? She reversed the KFC and made it FCK and said, fuck. We're sorry, we've totally fucked up. We haven't got any chickens. It's going to take us 4 weeks to get the chickens. We're really sorry. Now, you could conclude, therefore, news media, print media, is a brilliant advertising medium, except it's not. Only about 12% of the British population saw these print ads. The rest of them saw it as it was reflected and refracted through social media. But here, just here, you have a simple example of what everyone has forgotten. The authority and newsworthiness and trust of news media multiplied by the reach and contagion of social media. This multiplied by that. Clearly, campaign of the year in the US was the Kaepernick campaign. It actually started with outdoor. Then we had the famous 2-minute TV ad. Then we had the social media coverage. And then we had various coverages in the media. Again, that multiplied by that, by that, by that. Clearly, the answer has always been, do I want digital or traditional? The answer is yes, yes, And the word traditional doesn't make any fucking sense. So what do you want? Just good media. And please stop talking as if there's two different things. The lost secret formula that we knew 10 years ago and we've forgotten since is A times B is greater than 2A or 2B. What does that mean? It means this could be anything. This could be, I don't know, let's make that TV and that digital media. If you take your money that you're only going to spend on TV and put 5 or 10 or 20% on digital media, you will always get a better return than if you'd spend it all on TV. Or, for that matter, all on digital video. And you can put anything in there. Put search in there, right? It's always going to play off better. Multiplication. Diversity delivers better results than pumping all your money into one place. I've got tons of data to see this, right? So Analytic Partners did a meta study of 3,200 campaigns in America. They found that 29% of those campaigns only used one platform. The platform could be Facebook, could be radio, could be TV, could be news media. When a campaign used two platforms, whatever they might be, and 31% of the time campaigns use two platforms, so let's say it's TV plus Facebook, the outcome was an increase of 19% in ROI. When there were three platforms, the performance controlled for budget was 23% over one medium. With 4 platforms, it was 31% over one platform. With 5 platforms, it was 35%. The answer to the question, digital or traditional, is yes. You want as many fucking channels as you can afford within S-shaped efficiency curves, because the more channels you can utilize, the bigger the synergy and the more the impact. What does that tell you? It tells you that digital marketers are fundamentally stupid. They're limiting themselves to one little partition when diversity was always the answer. Why would you live in one half of your house when both sides would make you more effective? What the fuck's wrong with outdoor? It's a digital media now, after all. You need to be a master of all of them. The word digital makes no fucking sense. It's like saying electricity. What kind of laptop have you got? I've got an electric one, right? What kind of marketing are you doing? I'm doing digital marketing. Yeah, okay. I'm not the only one saying this. This is Mark Reed, the new CEO of WPP. Last month when he announced his new he's the most important advertising guy in the world. Last month when he announced his organizational changes, he said digital is a word that has been banned from WPP. The artificial distinction between analog and digital is not helpful. Stefan Berube, the CMO at L'Oreal, is about the most impressive young CMO in the world. He said a year ago, I don't believe we have an online and offline consumer. Marketing needs to move on from having digital priorities. We need to stop talking about what is the digital strategy. I'm making a big point of this in the culture of L'Oreal. I smile when agencies claim they're doing digital. Honestly, maybe that was good in 2010, but in 2018, they should claim they just do marketing. We need to stop talking about digital. It's all part of marketing. Now, let's make it clear. If you're a marketer that doesn't have digital nuance and capability, you're also fucked here, right? Because marketing is digital and digital is marketing. But the D word is just going to restrict you. It's going to halve your salary. It's going to leave you in a tactical ghetto. So there's a simple recommendation for those of you in the room that carry the affliction of being a digital marketer. I have seen the future, the next stage of evolution in marketing. You should no longer be a digital marketer, and you should become the next stage in marketing evolution, which is a marketer. Behold the future. Your salary will go up, your access to strategy will increase, and you won't be outdated. So, it's been 17 years since I came to Stockholm, and this is what I have learned. First of all, tight brand architecture. Less brands will make you more successful. Learn to kill. Unless you've got an amazing reason to have more than one brand, keep it with one brand. And if you've never culled your brands, it's time to visit that portfolio. Targeting both long and short. You need to split your budget 60-40 or maybe 70-30. Mass and targeted, and have the capability to do both for short-term efficiency and long-term effectiveness. Simple, realistic positioning. Differentiation is being done down right now because it's been trendy to say there's no such thing as differentiation. I don't think there ever was necessarily complete straw man differentiation. I think clearly different brands stand for different things, and that can be strategically advantageous. Clear codes need to be developed and always supplied. We have missed this point. Unless they know it's you, none of these points will apply. You need 1 or 2 smart strategic objectives each year, and you need to go after them really hard, or you're part of that mass group of brands that aren't really doing proper strategy. There'll be other years. Set a target, achieve it, and then we'll revisit for the next year coming. In contrast to strategy, have as many channels as you can afford. So the strategic process is winnowing it down to 1, maybe 2 objectives and going hard after them. But the tactical challenge is then to use as many different channels as possible, because they will give you a better return within the limits of your actual investment threshold. Tack så mycket.